Alright, let's look at here. You might think, well, consent statement and signatures, it seems that's so easy, right? I just get all this, person's signature here, and add a date and add a title. It seems so easy. But I made a video out of it. It's not easy. There is a lot of gotcha. So first, you need to understand who needs to sign here. Okay? So basically, this Form 8832 must be signed by an authorized representative of the entity first. And second is that all affected person. Okay? So basically, two classification here. One is the authorized representative of the entity. Okay? This is one. The second is all the person affected. So who is considered all the person affected, you may ask. For example, if you change the classification, the tax classification of this entity, for example, the owner, right? The owners who are required to file tax return, right? They do affect the personal tax return if you change the classification of that entity, because owners are going to file the tax return themselves. Okay? So that's the person being affected. So they need to be consistent. Okay? Because this is also sort of considered an information return back to the IRS, so they get one of the information. These things need to check out. That especially, the dates, it need to work. And speaking of a date, I want to also talk about the fine print here. Why they need a date? Because there are some scenarios that's a little bit complex. Because the election, remember, we find this Form 8832 as an election. The election can be made retroactive. Remember, we got a window here. So there's filing before 75 days, so D, and after 12 months. So we got a certain time frame. So that can result in the election is retroactive. Okay? Here comes to another tricky part, because if these elections are retroactive and you're a big organization or, I don't know, small organization, but the owners do sell their ownership, okay? That do happen, especially during a lot of negotiation. Some investor decide, well, I'm out, this person say, well, you're out, I am in, something like that do happen. So if this thing can be done retroactively, and owners who were part of this entity during the retroactive period, but right now are no longer the owner, because I sell them. Okay? You know what? That person also need to sign here. Okay? That's the reason you got like a date information here. So that do matter. This small, tiny little bit detail, signature, date, title, this do matter, especially this retroactive scenario. Okay? You need to find that person needs to sign. And what about there are more person need to sign this form, right? If you look at that as just only this amount of signature, what about you got a more person need to sign? How to do that? Really, really simple. You got another Form 8832. You got exactly the same information. Okay? The information need to be the same. You can't file another Form 8832 and got erroneous information or different information. Okay? You just want a continuation of this form, so you got exactly the same thing. You attach that to Form 8832, and then you add more signature. You can even add some explanations, letters to it. Say, well, this is because we got a more signature. Right now, we can't fill inside this signature consent statement and signatures form, so we add a continuation form for that. You add explanations, and then you write exactly the same information, so the situation get less confusing for IRS. Okay, so that can just make the person work at IRS a little bit easier, right? Because you don't want to get like a really conflicted and messy information. So yeah, you just add a little bit explanations with smooth things. Okay? But as I said, there's a time frame. But what if, if the entity is like filing election late? Okay? That do happen in reality. So luckily we got part 2 here. We got late election relief. Remember, it's a relief. Okay? It's not like surefire. So it's just a relief. And you need to explain, you need to make your strong case about it. So you know what? You need to fill the explanations. So basically, you look at that, we got tons of empty space. So you're going to provide a detailed explanation why this entity, failed to file the election on time. You need to make your case and then sign here. Okay? Also need to sign by authorized representative of the entity and all this affected person. But the eligibility of the relief do matter. They got tons of requirements. Okay? So there is still some revenue procedure codes that you need to follow, right? You need to meet specific requirements in order to file this late election relief. For example, reasonable cause. This is this is like really vague stuff. Reasonable cause for the late filing, you're filing consistent tax return with the intent of the classifications, and within a certain time frame, right? 3 years, 75 days before effective days and all that. But there are some requirements and some vague, reasonable causes that I need to argue. So it's more about how to make this, how to make your case, okay? How to make sense. Why is this a late election and all that? So the field there, signature there, same requirement. And then that's all for this Form 8832. Okay, hope that helps.